Coming to you live 150 miles from the Arctic Circle. I'm Crais Martelle, and Michael is not here. He's on his way to New Jersey. And we have a special guest, Martha Carr. Say hi,
Hey,
Martha.
hello. Hi. Hello, everybody. I'm the surprise guest. Hope it's a good surprise.
So a different M. So if your name doesn't start with M, we can't ever have you as a guest on the show. So it can always be the C&M show.
Right. Or the MC show. Either way, it works both ways.
It does. It does. Well, the C&M show, I guess, Craig and Martelle, I guess I can be both for now. Anyway, welcome. Welcome to the show. Where are you now?
I'm in Austin, Texas, in my office, where I usually am.
Now that you write full time, you have gone full time.
Right. As of March 1st. Yeah. I finally, I was actually making about 3 times at books what I was making at the day job. So it was getting to be stupid. And I nailed down how to do health insurance. That was the key thing too, to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. Because you're young. You're not old enough to be up Medicare yet.
No. And I'm at the age though, where I envy people who are.
This would make it easier if we just did this. Yeah. I have the healthcare as a Marine Corps retiree. I have either TRICARE or VA, and actually the VA is very good here. So I just go to the VA up in Fairbanks, Alaska. They're very good. They have a little section of the Fort Wainwright Hospital. So I get very good coverage, but then again, it cost me 21 years of my life to get that. So
it's a little expensive.
Yeah, there is a cost to everything you do. As Heinlein said, Tom Stoffel, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. So you just have to allocate those costs and discuss those. So today, and now that we have 24 people watching, thank you very much for jumping on board. But also this will be available in 20 books to 50K video. You just find that link and click on the videos and you'll see this pop up. I think I have Ep 16 listed. And also, thanks to the very kind help of Ann Lown and Elaine Bateman, they'll cut this over to YouTube for me for the 20 books to 50K live events section of YouTube. So there we are. But today we'll talk about tropificationalization, urban fantasy.
Yeah, that's my jam.
So what got you into urban fantasy?
Michael Anderle. He called one day and said, "How do you feel about writing an urban fantasy?" I was writing thrillers and getting nowhere. And it's amazing how I didn't realize, if you looked at what I like, that I wasn't recognizing that that's where I belonged in the first place. And I have adopted this attitude of just go through the open doors. So it turned out to be much easier and a better fit for me than thrillers. I just don't have, frankly, you can do an urban fantasy book with a thriller in it. So it just kind of fit who I am, and that's how I got into it.
That's it. How much urban fantasy did you read before you started writing in it?
I read it constantly. That's what I'm saying. I wasn't paying attention. So, Michael Anderle is one of the reasons he's so successful is because he doesn't ask what would others like to read. He asks himself, would I like to read it? Yeah. And that is really key, because then he is not trying to play medium with a crystal ball, guessing at others' tastes or the trends. He's got confidence enough to, and he sees himself as not an outlier, but one of a large number.
That's I think the big point.
Yes.
Is that it isn't such a niche. He actually likes really big genres, and he's very comfortable there, and he's melded some of them because nobody writes in just a single genre. They all cross a little bit.
And that's a good point to make too. He is not so enamored of, and so this has become the Praise Michael Anderle show, but that's fine. He is not so enamored of anything that he likes that he's not willing to adjust if he notices a super large trend. It's why his main character, Bethany Ann, was first a vampire and then a vampire in space. And so I've adopted that style as well, where I have to want to read it, but I'm willing to pay attention to adjustments. Like I've added more romance. I do tend to be more of a pew. I know. And but it's such a big thing. And also, frankly, I mean, I'm heading to Scotland with you guys, so I binge watched Outlander, and come on, any women who are watching have just raised their hands. Sam is all of our boyfriend. And so, you know, again, it's paying attention to what I like. I like romance, so why am I not putting it in?
You bet. And romance is it's simply a popular and respected genre. I mean, I'm not talking super steamy. I'm just talking romance. The elements of happily ever after. The elements of
yes.
two people falling in love. I think that's a constant. And that's one thing Michael does. That's one thing I do too. I don't say I write romance just simply because I've never read any romance books. I don't know. But I do have those relationships, and I do love the happily ever after. I do have one couple that's been married for 150 years, and they still find joy in their relationship. And he still checks out her butt and makes her walk up steps in front of him just so he could.
Yeah,
but that's
it's an element, though. Yeah, for me. So I do action adventure urban fantasy. So urban fantasy is fantasy set in a realistic setting. So it's going to be Earth, and you're going to recognize. So you have to play with those rules and then add rules on top. And I tend to like hidden magic because I think that's more fun to imagine that you and I are walking around and magic's really there and could appear at any moment, and we could be magical. But then the subgenres are like paranormal romance or urban fantasy or action adventure, which I love. So romance is only an element for me, and I'm very aware that if I did too much, that would also turn off the very readers that I have. So you do have to kind of pay attention, know where the line is. But if I wanted to do paranormal romance, I don't have enough.
PNR, I pronounce it peener. The trope, calling a romance element as a trope.
Yeah.
And it's also to appeal to that reader sect without getting completely in that genre.
Yes.
Because one of the things with marketing and targeting is you have to target one readership first. You can't target the super micro niche first, because then you're cutting out a lot of readers. Now, like Regency romance, that is a very small niche market. But what if you could expand that? What if you could target these 1,000 readers or 2,000 voracious readers?
Yes.
And there's 8,000 in the next shell. You want to get as many readers as possible. So maybe that's what you love to write, and that's okay. And that's urban fantasy. There's some varieties. There's a lot of varieties. And one, I put the story bundle, right? The urban fantasy academy or school, kind of like the Harry Potter. Okay, go to a school, learn magic, and do great things in a modern kind of setting. I didn't realize, I thought it was a fairly broad genre because I wanted to have a variety of books to choose from, because one of the challenges we've had over the last 2 years was having enough books of the right genre to put into a story bundle. I had over 200 people say, hey, I'm interested. So there's 200 different books in series or standalones that have that trope, that have the magic school. And holy cow, I looked at some of them. I mean, I don't get the hypersexualized female character on the cover with the super short plaid skirt and the hip check and that stuff. But that's I don't. But that doesn't mean it's not, because it's not my genre.
That's and that makes a great distinction, because there are when you're doing academy, you do have the hypersexualized, and there's a little more description when it comes to romance, and it's hotter, and the evil or darkness, it tends to be a little more brutal. Or we did School of Necessary Magic, and it was more YA, and so it was all toned down. So once again, you got to know which lane are you choosing to drive in, and stick to your lane. Because frankly, if you say I'm YA and then you drive into the other lane, you confuse everyone, and you end up no one likes it.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's important to manage the readership, and it's easiest to do that if you stay within certain lanes, and then you can expand later. Once you have your readers and they love your style, you can do whatever you want, almost whatever you want. Because look at J.K. Rowling. Okay, Harry Potter, great 7 books, awesome. And then Robert Galbraith, her her thriller.
Right,
and
right.
and that was the worst kept secret when it first came out. People were like, hey, it's a good book for the few who read it, but then it's all of a sudden it's like, oh no, that's really J.K. Rowling, million sales in a week, and okay, hey, no kidding. And they liked it, and people realized that, hey, I like this. So people will read multiple genres if they like you, but you have to establish you first.
Yes.
I saw somebody
that's a good point,
because we're talking UF tropes. Somebody posted a question, and I can't see anything. I can only see the questions, and I can't see that somebody answered somebody else or whatever. But they asked a question about urban fantasy. Does it have to be big city, or can it be a small town?
It can definitely be a small town. It can be anything you want. I mean, Kimbra Swain has a urban fantasy series set in a trailer park, and that attracted me because I like humor. I tend to write humor in mine as well, humor and mystery. And so that was a good clue for anybody who does, that's probably going to be a part of it. But you can set it anywhere. It definitely does not have to be big city. And if you're from a small town and you particularly know things about a small town that would make the story stand out, then you should go for it.
The small towns, I much prefer small towns to big cities. And one thing that is always attractive in small towns is everybody knows everybody. Fairbanks is my idea of a big city. It's got 30,000 people, right? But no matter where you go, you run into people you know. My wife is a professor at the university, and she'll be like, oh, hey, and a clerk or somebody, hey, one of my former students, hey, here's a person with a master's degree working here doing this, like a craft or something. It's really weird and cool, but it's the small city vibe that everybody knows everybody. And rush hour is if you ever have to wait for another light, like the light turns green and not all the cars get through it, that's rush hour, and that happens like once a week. That I might run into that, and it pisses me off every time. And I'm like, and I swear, damn it, I'm never coming down here during rush hour again.
And I raised my son in a small town, and if you didn't move at a red light, no one honked, or green light, no one honked, they would get out and check on you.
No, they'll honk up here. We have enough refugees from the lower 48 who are impatient, or they'll jam their pedal to the metal and slide around you in their truck as they.
So you being able to put that into a story set where you are tells you something immediately about the type of people set there. Me being able to say they'd get out of the car and come check on you, the reader instantly knows something about the people without the narrator stepping in too much and giving some long explanation. Yeah, so that's why it works.
Yeah, like starting off the sentence with his small town roots suggested he would get out of the car. It's just feed him. Here's this. Yeah, I wouldn't have gone with that, even though, yes, I could see that very small town or neighborhood. You recognize somebody's car and they're just stopped and sitting there. It guarantees somebody will check on you.
Yeah, well, you just have the main character lost in thought at the green light about whatever this plot is, and then looks up to see the somebody who she recognizes standing at the window gently tapping, asking if you're all right. I mean, the reader's going to pick up what you're trying to say without you blatantly telling them. But anyway, yeah, that's why a small town will work. So, yes. Okay.
I saw somebody ask a question, UF question. Do vampires have to burn in sunlight? I think that's paranormal as opposed to UF.
No, we do vampires in paranormal. I mean, in UF as well. We cross lines. And no, I break those. There's certain things about a vampire that I see lots of people break. They don't have to drink blood necessarily. They don't have to burn in sunlight. You can make them up, and you just have to be consistent with what you do and maybe choose one or two vampire tropes that you do include. Otherwise, don't call it a vampire.
I think every vampire should act and talk like Bela Lugosi.
Sure. That would be funny.
That's else. What other hints might you have for finding UF readers? Because it's there's a lot of books out there. So what makes a book stand out?
Well, the cover. First of all, I can see a cover and know that on the cover alone, they're going to get so many people to come and look at it and flip through it. So that's going to be the first thing. I would personally say pay for a professional cover because I've yet to really see an outstanding one that someone made. And you don't have to go super expensive. There's lots of great people out there who can do a cover for about $300, which I know for some people is a lot of money. I'm not trying to say that that's a drop in the bucket, but if you're trying to make money on your book, you're going to get it back in sales. And then the next thing is going to be the blurb. Don't tell the story in your blurb. That is not the point. So it would be like for Doritos, if when they were trying to tell you why you wanted to buy them, they listed the ingredients. Who would care? If you notice, their commercials are kind of stupid, and what they're trying to say is this is fun to eat. And
that's it. That's
it.
A book. It's that simple. This is going to be a great read.
Yes.
And hopefully for the right, if it's a fun read, if it's a serious read, whatever your target readership is, make sure the blurb grabs them by the bejewelry snackers and pulls them in.
Right. And then there's a very good chance that they're going to look inside. And I personally start every book with action. And it doesn't have to be a drawn out scene. It can be a short one, but I go back and craft more than anything. I'm going to craft that first page so that when they look look inside, they're already wondering what's coming next. So that's going to help you out tremendously right there. You don't have a lot of chance after that. They're done by then. And if you can put humor in your blurb, you're going to sell every time. I mean, that's not everybody's forte, and that's my forte on a good day, but maybe not on every day. And also, if you're having a better day later, go back and rewrite your blurb too.
The great thing about publishing on Amazon is you can rewrite your blurb 1,000 times. But be advised, if you go through Author Central, this is a kind of a basic thing for authors who may not know. You go through Author Central, you make changes to your blurb, and they come up on there and they look great. Hey, life is good. And then if you go back, if you ever have a price change through your KDP dashboard, it will change back to whatever your blurb is in your KDP dashboard. This is an important safety tip that I didn't know for a year and a half. Yeah. So I'm like, how does this keep changing? What the hell? Anytime you have a price that you run a countdown deal, you run a free day, you just price it down, you do anything that goes through the I'm suspect that even a KDP, a KU renewal will refresh your thing. So you can change it through Author Central as many times as you want, but you need to go over and change it in the KDP dashboard to make sure that it sticks. And I use Dave Chesson's description generator tool to HTML it, so it has like an H2 header to begin with, and so on to gain some consistency. I have bold, I have italics, just tweak it up that way, because you just paste in the HTML. If you ever have to change it, you have to paste in the HTML, all of it over again. If you try to edit within the HTML, it's going to self-destruct, because I used to program in HTML, so I can do that. I just go in and tweak. Oh, no, don't do that. Change the whole thing at once. Just copy, paste. There you go. Bob's your uncle. Life is good. Somebody asked a question, Martha, that you may have the answer to. What is the difference between paranormal and UF?
Paranormal means most likely you have vampires and werewolves. They are. It doesn't mean you can't include them in urban fantasy, and if they're minor characters, it's not really paranormal, but you might qualify for paranormal subgenres, or you can alert readers they are in that story. But if your story is really vampire focused, and the main character is a vampire or werewolf, you're talking paranormal. If you have elves, fairies, witches, wizards, gnomes, you're talking urban fantasy more.
Fays, bays, and other ways.
Yes. And one more thing about covers too. Purple and green are tropes for urban fantasy. And so you create a back setting that looks like a city or houses or something that signals this is Earth. And then you put purple and green in. But I've seen a lot of covers where they only put purple in. And the point of putting some colors that don't fight each other is so the eye will move around the picture. But if your whole thing is purple, the eye perceives it as a flat, and it's not as enticing. And if you do the same thing when decorating a room, you have splashes of color, it pulls the eye from left to right. and a glow. I'm doing an urban fantasy anthology. We're donating the proceeds to the American Library Association's Relief Fund.
Cool.
And we have a woman holding a glowing sword. So that's your first clue. It's urban fantasy. And a monstrous dragon right behind her standing on a crushed car with a bent road sign. So you know it's action adventure. You know it's urban fantasy. You know it's urban and fantasy because of the glowing sword. And there is some green, but it's limited.
Nice. The I know there are some all-star cover designers. There's a lot, but ones I've seen lately: Moonchild, Heather Center, and even Christian Bentalon out of the Philippines have done some incredible covers in this genre. And I know there's an unlimited number of other ones. I'm not trying to shortchange anyone. These are just the ones I know, and I don't even know the genre. That's why I had a guest. And please don't take my facial expressions or anything. I'm stuck with this face, like paranormal romance or romance or anything like that. It's just I don't know those genres. I don't know urban fantasy. I've read the 7 Harry Potter books, and that's it. I have read no other urban fantasy books, but I have read Suzanne Collins' Gregor in the Underworld, and that's where do you think that would fall?
I have not read that series. But if it's in the underworld, it starts to walk a fine line because for example, Fairhaven Chronicles in Orosaren starts out on Earth and then goes underground, and it's kind of urban fantasy, but it's walking a line because you're not technically on Earth, you're in Earth. And in hers, she walks it really well because the costuming stays like Earth. It's not that flowing look that fantasy often has.
Yeah.
And there's not as much magic, or as Michael likes to call magic-y. And so it really starts to be a fine line, but you do have to be careful because if you push too, so this is one thing that I found out the hard way. If it's too much into fantasy, urban fantasy people will not read it. They don't cross each other as much as you think. No. As a matter of fact, sci-fi guys tend to like to read urban fantasy more than fantasy likes to read urban fantasy.
I would tell you that, yes. I am almost pure science fiction reader. Yeah. And I'm okay with certain urban I've read Harry Potter and I fantasy. Like them. But there's so much sci-fi out there to read that I don't go out and search for other ones. And I have found that I can't read fantasy because the flowing descriptions
different.
It is so different. That's right. And we did through the Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America, we did a story bundle last year for fantasy, and we wanted to make it high fantasy, but we didn't get enough of offerings. So
That's
we opened
surprising.
it up to urban fantasy, and we got a bunch, and we split. We had half the books fantasy and the other half urban fantasy. And guess which story bundle didn't sell very well?
Really? The fantasy one? Was it the fantasy one?
Well, no, they were both in the same one. Fantasy and urban fantasy were clumped together.
So you had two different audiences, and so they were only half satisfied.
So yes, half the audience was half satisfied, and it didn't sell very well. You really have to differentiate. This is because I didn't want to do it, but we had like 5 and 5 is all. That's right. SIFWA, and that last year we didn't open it up to other readers like we did with the time travel bundle that opens in just a few weeks now. And we were able to get, I think, 5 or 6 people from 20 books who aren't SIFWA members to submit their time travel books and are accepted into the story bundle. So it was a big, big win. I did get accepted for the urban fantasy story bundle for next year, but I'm going to have to dial that back. I think because like I said, we got 200, and out of those, I bet you we have a bunch of like new adult or adult things, and I think I want to tweak that down and make it just young adult.
The dogs just spotted.
The dogs are up.
They're up and running, but I left the back door open so they could run outside.
But personally, I personally would like to get away from any of the hypersexualized kind of stories. Those
you're looking for action adventure.
And I'm looking for action. I'm looking for Harry Potter. I mean, and there were the romance elements in there, but not not the grind. Let's keep the grind. And that's my personal preference. I'm not denigrating anyone.
No,
that's not it. It's just I have 200, and how do I narrow it down? And if I'm going to have to review these, I prefer reading something that's YA.
And like I said, I like Outlander, and anyone who's read Outlander is smiling because it has a lot of clear sex in it. But I also like YA, but I would like to know what I'm getting into. So I have respect for both. Yeah.
Somebody asked a question. How about the difference between UF and contemporary fantasy? Rather significant.
Oh, yeah. So I'll give you an example. For the anthology I'm doing, one of the rules was starts on Earth, stays on Earth, ends on Earth. You cannot leave Earth. And that cures it of venturing into contemporary fantasy, because contemporary fantasy has a created atmosphere. Like Orisarin, the universe, that was if the character was on Orisarin, that's fantasy. And we found out the hard way that is not urban fantasy. So that's what, they don't cross each other. And by the way, the writers who wrote books that went to Orisarin their writing style was more urban fantasy, and it still didn't work because the two don't cross.
And it can still be a good story. You just have to change your targeting.
Yes.
And that's once you understand your targeting, your blurb, and then you make the cover align, because if you have a purple and green UF cover on a fantasy book, you probably need to change that.
It would be like, again, my Doritos suggest, if you had it in a cereal box, everyone's confused.
We'd still eat them.
But we'd wonder what. Yeah, but we'd wander around wondering how we could find more, opening all the cereal boxes.
The trick, as I learned as an adult, if you want the prize, you just open the bottom of the cereal box.
Right.
Yeah. Never thought of that. I thought I was plenty smart. No. So, any other questions that we missed? What do you have coming up? What do you have coming up in urban fantasy?
I have a lot coming up. So right now I have a new series, the Pea Brain Adventures, and using a new kind of magic with bubbles and funny, and it's action adventure. And in that universe, I have coming up the Witches of Pressler Street, and Charlie Case is going to be collaborating with me on the adventures of Finnegas Dragonbender. And then over in Orisarin, we have Dwarf Bounty Hunter. And by the way, when naming a series, if you can stick the magical being in the series title and make it super clear, I've just watched how those series do better. So Dwarf Bounty Hunter is a good series title, because guess what he is and what he does for a living. And then
the cover is great. That cover really is good artwork.
And the cover designer Caleb keeps putting on holding cards for the titles, and his titles are so good we keep them. But anyway, thank God, because once you've named a lot of covers. But anyway, we also have coming up in Orisarin, The Witch Next Door, and that's YA, and I think that one's going to be a lot of fun. And we did ramp up the romance a little.
Okay.
So that was a lot.
I have a couple questions that popped up, and one is, I think this one's been asked multiple times. Can UF have angels or demons? And this is, I know Michael has had angels and demons.
Well, and Shane Silvers, doesn't he have? He has that theme going on too, and he's doing. I hear he's doing really well.
I buy all his books. He releases once every 6 weeks to huge fanfare.
Yes.
And that's I wanted to get at that with my release strategies book, was that you just manage the reader expectation, you manage the release, and that's what's known as a hard release, because it's very, very well managed. He has like a couple hundred reviews the first day because of his arc and how he manages that whole process. And then it comes out in huge, stays high ranked for a long time. And then 6 weeks later, the next book will come out. So it's all very, very well managed.
From day one, his interaction with his fans has been super high in the Facebook group. And he also is very good about coming up with inexpensive ways to increase that interaction, such as making up a Facebook banner that announces the release. And then if you use that banner, you have a chance to win a signed copy of the book, a hard copy.
Yep.
Well, that's pretty smart because they're out there doing the ad for him. And if they like it,
and one copy for the price of one. And that's getting fans to share. And we've done that. You've helped me do that with the King Sumo. And it's all good. It's a good way to connect. So yes, UF can have angels and demons, and as long as the events take place on Earth,
correct.
Yes. And heavy magical, it doesn't have to be heavy magical for UF. Nope. It just has to be, has to be some magic.
Let me give you a great example of that. The Unbelievable Mr. Brownstone. It was a huge seller in Orsarin. It had almost no magic. It had a drow. It had some. But we used, Michael, who wrote that, used just as much realistic weapons as he did some powers. It was a heavy mix of the two, and man, did they love it. So know your audience or who you're aiming for. Michael, again, is aiming for what he likes. He doesn't like heavy magic. He likes a lot more pew, pew. And it's so, I mean, in character. So, well, it doesn't matter what you're writing. For me, character development is king. And I start out asking who the character is and what are somebody asked you to describe a friend, what are the things you'd say? So for me, it'd be loves DC Comics, likes to annoy Craig. I can't even, loves big dogs. You got to think of what, I like vegan, but I keep that hidden because that seems to not be popular online.
Somebody asked the question, and it's a "Have you stopped beating your wife?" question. Why are demons UF but vampires are not? Listen to the podcast because we already addressed that, and vampires are. So your question is incorrectly stated. Well, so don't do that to me. As a lawyer, it annoys me. So there, you wanted something that annoys me. How about a question that's worded incorrectly with an assumption that isn't correct?
Yeah. And
so
also,
I don't know who made that, so I'm sorry but that's it.
Yeah, and there's a good point. You can take any kind of enhanced ability that you gave to your character, like I'm using bubbles, and bubbles aren't normal, but I wanted to play with them. And if the person is basically of human looking form, and has an enhanced ability, you can make that urban fantasy. That's why a vampire works. That's why an angel can work. The wings can disappear and they can walk down the street. Yeah, you can make anything. You can make up your own. In Orsarin, we have Kilameas. Who knows why? But they're big, brutish characters. They're mostly muscle and, don't do a lot of thinking before they punch you in the face. It's an urban fantasy, and I made it up.
The characters on the vampires, I don't know who's commenting there, but as long as they're a secondary character, that's the difference between UF and paranormal. Vampires, werewolves as secondary characters. The primary characters in UF are mostly human.
Mostly, I believe. But I mean, we're doing dwarf bounty hunter.
Human with modifications.
Yeah, we're doing dwarf bounty hunter, and one of the fun things we're doing is dwarves tend to be shorter, but all the ladies love him, and no one can figure out why.
Okay.
And so we've mixed him in with the general population. So it's not other dwarves who like him; it's hot babes who like him. And that makes, so you're pushing more into the urban fantasy lane. And then the adventures of Finnegan Dragonbender, he's a dwarf, but we're changing it so dwarves are actually tall. And you can use anything you want, but you got to make them somehow human qualities.
Because it's character. The urban fantasy being character driven. The magic as an element. But you look at Harry Potter, they don't use magic. They use it on occasion, and they go to school for it. But what you see is all those interactions is just they're interacting between themselves. And that's the great attraction is you're able to touch on today's issues, something as simple as bullying and like Potter Stinks and the little
yes,
whirly thing. You could hit on bullying, and then you see here's our hero. Everybody loves Harry Potter. He's the chosen one, and still they're bullying him.
Yeah,
and
because he was different, which speaks to a lot of people. And they also had a lot of politics in the Harry Potter books. And they had what was his best friend's name with the red hair?
Ron.
Ron's family was not as rich as other families. You know, some people think that if it's urban fantasy, everybody could make money, and that may not be one of the rules. So it was nice. They had this middle class family where she gave sweaters. I don't remember what the English word. Everybody in the UK is now saying what it really is.
Oh.
So yeah, you can do. That's why I like urban fantasy. You can do so much with it as long as you're consistent with your rules. So by the way, I keep a Bible of all the rules so that I don't accidentally break them. And then I think this is more important in urban fantasy than maybe anything else. At least I only do urban fantasy, so I could be wrong. But you can't break your own rules. And after you're on book 6 or book 30, because you've done several series, it gets super hard. For some reason, the fans do a better job than I do. So I have a beta team that reads and will point out to me in book 1 on page 63. Sure enough. So I do keep a Bible, but I still need help. It gets more and more complicated to remember some little fine rule.
I have my insider team, same thing. They save me on canon, my own canon.
Yeah.
Because after writing so many millions of words, you kind of get confused. You don't remember those details, and they're able to find right to it. Can you also talk about acceptable and marketable overlap with UF and sci-fi, meaning UF elements of sci-fi like experimentation or secret government lab? You have to pick one. And now this is and from marketing standpoint, you can try to water down your ads and go after both at the same time, or you can have separate ads that go after UF, separate ads that go after sci-fi. Find which one gains more traction and then leverage that. And so you can do whatever you want. You can have all kinds of crossovers. It's okay. I put thriller stuff. I'm writing. I'm almost done with my Executioner 6, which is a space lawyer. Well, this one, I added a thriller element and a big legal scene, like a good big Boston legal scene, right? 20,000 words. So scene, a number of chapters. So that one, will it be well received by my action fans who like the action? So I had to interweave stuff, but it's like a courtroom drama / thriller. And I've tweaked that into a good science fiction book. And you can do that. However, my readers are science fiction, so they're counting on a little sci-fi. Yeah. So AIs, we have a lot of interaction with AI, so that keeps it sci-fi-y enough. And I think this book will be well received. Also, it's a freak in that it's much longer than the previous like 3 or 4 books. I'm at 58,000. I got over 2,000 words this morning, and it no end in sight. 58,000. So usually I shoot for nowadays 55,000 is a good book, and 60,000 is a great book, and 80,000 is an even better book. So for length, because I'm in KU, so longer is better.
Yeah. So to what you were saying though, for people who are just starting out and their ad budget may be limited, I would suggest, based on my own mistakes, which I've made some really good ones, but learned from, you really have to pick the genre you're aiming for and do your testing within that genre. It's what you were saying earlier, build a base first. If you don't, so you're going to either build a lot of pylons that are short, or you're going to build one solid one. And if you care about the money, and frankly, not everybody does. Some people, it's more about the story and the craft, and that's cool. So I'm only speaking to the people who really, they're looking for the income to be one of the primary things. Because if you don't have a good book, by the way, you're not going to sell many. So to me, that's a given. So, for example, Michael, during Cartharian Gambit, he had a vampire in space. He marketed towards sci-fi. And now that he's got such a huge base, he's got several genres going. But if you're new and you're also learning how to market and you're also learning about your genre, don't make it harder on yourself. Be very, very focused. And also get in the Facebook groups for your genre and make friends. Don't be all about the announcing what you've got. Actually try to get to know the people and help them out and make comments. And they will also want to help you. So, but you can't do that if you're trying to be, you have to pick and choose. You can't be on every social marketing thing. You can't be all things to all people. You want to be a really great thing to a big enough pond. So not a tiny pond, but a big enough one.
Like if you jump on a website and you're talking about tropes, or you jump in a Facebook group and you're talking about tropes, but don't wicker it towards yours. Just say, hey, here's what I like, or somebody mentions a trope. Don't demean it. One of the worst things you can do as an author is badmouth anybody else. Okay, hey, I don't read that, and leave it at that. But I do read this, and here's what I've seen from this trope. And you could talk about that as opposed to my trope is better than J.K. Rowling's. You're not going to gain any fans with that. And if you like Harry Potter, you'll love me. Okay, don't do that. Just, hey, for Harry Potter fans, something new. All right, something different. Now you've set the expectation that it's like this without saying it's better. Saying you're better than a very popular author is
saying you're better than anybody.
That's the best way to put it. Saying you're not. You're just different, unique. You bring a voice. And when you join these groups, just be a part of the group, but don't be pushing your ride. People will see that and they'll dive in, and they'll not engage with you. So when the time does come and you have your book and it's on sale or whatever, and you try to pimp it, people aren't going to be listening.
Less likely
because you don't have the credibility. Yeah.
And so a lot of a healthy amount of humility, which is a great thing to have, and it goes a long way, but it also takes a certain amount of courage, because I know when you're new, you may have a few bills to pay that's kind of making you stare at the ceiling at night, and I totally get that, and I've been there. So it really is a practice to let go of the fear. And the way I do it personally is I surround myself with people who, if I were to come to them, and by the way, I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm in six figures, and I'm really bad at math, so I always have to count on my fingers to make sure
almost like $100,000 or more.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay, good. Because I'm trying to make sure I'm not saying millionaire, because I'm not in that category. And so I'm doing really well, but I still can have days where, for whatever reason, I've decided to question all of life. And so I will only call people to talk to who, first of all, won't let me go on and immediately jump to the solution. Yes. And I won't let you go on and on either, by the way. And so I want somebody who will not jump in with suggestions, but will ask me, what are you trying to accomplish? And what have you tried so far? And then they will talk about their experience, and they'll say, this is what I've tried. But what I'm saying is they're only interested in the solution. They will not say, oh, yeah, you're screwed. And it's because they see everything as data. And so why would you be screwed? It means what you're doing didn't work. I wrote 500,000 words of a thriller series, rest in peace, that no one cares. And boy, did I throw money at that sucker. We just won't even add it up.
Yeah.
And the truth is, for whatever reason, I suck at it. And so urban fantasy, whew. And the Pea Brain Adventures, I may end up changing the title because despite Michael laughing his head off and constantly saying it won't sell as well because you put Pea Brain in the title, he was right. And
yeah, calling the fans pea brains. I know it's a term of endearment. However, because I always try to market toward the person who's never seen you or heard of you before.
I know, but one thing about me is, on occasion, I have to try it my way, and then I change my mind. And it doesn't happen often. Usually, I'm willing to do it the right way, but occasionally in life. But I'm in a financial position where I can do it, and I'm already changed my mind at book 3, so my stubbornness does not go on forever. But yeah, so anyway, what I'm saying is, every one of us is going to have days where we question something and it starts to gain roots. Call the people only who will just automatically jump to the solution. And then you'll get back on track faster. You'll stop doing the spiral and catastrophization in your head. And you will actually do things or not do things, which is sometimes the right answer, to get you back to where you need to be. I mean, Michael was helping me think up new titles last night. It got to be stupid after a while. I don't have one yet.
But the titles are so important. My first book, I had it titled incorrectly, and it went to the wrong demographic. Right. So if you want to target teenage girls, it's not enough to just exist is a great title. You would think it's a little long, but man, when I ran it, I had a huge response. Not a single purchase, mind you, because it's a post-apocalyptic book. So the wrong title. But I thought it applied. But do away with all of those artistic thoughts and put a title on it that will sell it.
Clear,
like
right?
Dwarf the Bounty Hunter.
Dwarf Bounty Hunter, yeah. And the art Caleb put on there is a place card. Go dwarf yourself. And Michael and I laughed and said, we're keeping that title. So the book one is called Go Dwarf Yourself. It's perfect for, and by the way, it happened to fit the type of story. It's more of a James Brownstone story. It's perfect.
Good. And that is, it's so much easier to sell a book if you hook them with the cover. And I consider the title an incremental element of the cover. Because you can have a cover and you have this flowing typography that doesn't necessarily grab the reader, even though the image is killer. Everything has to work together. I get the typography most times separate from the artist and the artistry of the book, just because it's so important. And I had 40 different books recovered over the last month, and a rather significant effort. I told one of my artists, Ryan Schwartz, that I should probably just put him as a co-signatory on my checking account. But one of the covers we covered 3 times. We did it because we released it and said, hey, here's this. Oh, it's not quite hitting exactly. Let's adjust it. Let's adjust it. Yeah. And holy crap, I bought 3 covers for one book. Yeah. In the course of about 6 weeks, and then got all the rest.
So the Lyra Chronicles has had 3 covers. A new one because it's been out a while. So sometimes you do it because it's been out a while and helps revive it. And because maybe we're looking at doing another book with the troll, the beloved troll. And the first covers Michael and I really liked, but we caught on pretty fast that we were alone on that. And so I'm trying to say too, you can hear that Craig and I have made errors and it didn't kill a series. So we changed the covers, we made some adjustments, and they took off. I mean, Lyra Chronicles has made a lot of money, but then I had the thriller series that you could have shocked the thing, and nothing was ever going to happen. So you also have to know I've tried everything I can. I've tried all the elements. It's just not flying. I must have missed the tropes. Who knows? Yeah. And so sometimes you got to let go and bury it and move on. But don't feel like I really screwed up the blurb. Life is over. No, and if you don't write good blurbs, go find somebody who can help you, who can look at it. I don't know that throwing it out there in a group is always good. You should get 15 people, and that personally overwhelms me, and then I don't know what to do. But that's me.
Yeah, I've done all different kinds of ways with blurbs, and the great thing about a blurb is you can change it 100 times in 100 days if you want.
That's right.
It really is. It's wide open. And when you finally hit it, it's one of those things. It's like porn. You know it when you see it. When you have a good blurb, you look at it and just say, "That's right." So if you look at a blurb and say, "I'm not sure," then you need to change it, because that's the exact same thing. The average browser, when they're cruising through, they see your blurb, your first 2 sentences. If it doesn't hook them, then you might want to rewrite it. So the cover, with a title that's gripping, Go Dwarf Yourself, Dwarf Bounty Hunter, and a great picture of the dwarf on the cover. I mean, very high contrast. And and
Well, and
stand
he's
out.
holding an axe and a dead monster in a red pickup truck. I mean, you kind of get the whole, and he's got on sunglasses. You kind of get the whole image. It's just perfect. Sometimes you hit it and you know the book. Like I said, I can look at covers and other people's too, and I know they're going to get a lot of sales because they really, I haven't even read the blurb yet, and I just know. Unless they really screwed up the blurb, they're going to get a lot of, and then we go on to, okay, how did book 2 do? So if you have an outstanding buy of book 1 and then it drops off below 60, I mean, below 70 really % read through, then you know there's something about the end to book 1 that is not making them, and then we're back to characters. Because I know they come back to me because they're dying to know what the troll did, what Lyra did, or what Maggie did. And they talk about them like they know them.
Yeah.
And by the way, let me just one other little smart thing that all of us do that new people can do. Super fans' names I regularly use as regulars in the books, and they know it. And it's fun, and they love it. So that's a free thing you can do. Yeah.
I did on the Facebook, the readers group. I solicited for names. I said, I want a female, I want a male, I want a female alien, and male alien, and a butthole, because you never know when you're going to need a butthole name in the story. So I got a great variety. I saved that post because we had 60, 70 different comments. And here it is a year later, and I go refer to that post, and I'll comment, hey, I'm going to use this name in a book.
Yes.
And then I throw it in the author notes. And so I have a ready place to go. And the readers have been engaged, and it's a great thing. Managing reader expectations is always a good thing, and maintaining that dialogue with your readers, whether it's through a blog post, whether it's through your newsletter, whether it's through whatever it needs, maintaining a dialogue with your readership is really a good thing. You want to keep them on board and fans. Once you have them as a fan, don't let them go.
Yes, tend to them like a garden. And by the way, we assume everybody knows what author notes are. For those who don't, it's at the end of the story, it's a personal note, not necessarily about the book at all. That is just what's going on in your life. Michael's tend to be super funny. I'm just not that funny. And mine are more personal. And you know they're working when the Amazon reviews sometimes are about your author notes and not the book. It's delightful.
Yeah. I talk about Alaska in mine. So
yes,
most people don't know anybody from Alaska, but you guys all do. You know me.
Yeah, and Phyllis the Arctic dog.
Indeed.
Yes. So author notes, though, really do help readers get attached to you. So like what you were saying earlier, you are just as important. And I find that I need to be myself. I used to be traditionally published, and I had an agent, etc. And it was much more formal, and your bio was in the third person, and I had to kind of shake that off. You get comfortable with being yourself. I mean, like in videos, I wish my neck was different, but you just learn to be yourself, and then you realize that's what people are looking for. And they interact with you, and you have a great time. I have fan art in my house, the troll, other things. And it's so much fun. That's the troll over my shoulder in an Andy Warhol style. This is the house the troll built, by the way.
Indeed. I mean, over my shoulder. Well, yeah, don't look at that.
You have James Patterson for some reason, which has been fascinating me from the start. But
for a forward, yeah. Well, you little leaguer over there in Austin, Texas. Mickey Spillane said that the first chapter sells this book, the last chapter sells the next book.
Yes.
So it's and one thing that we adhere to, and Martha does this as well because we're Michael Anderle adherents.
Yes.
Is we end every story. There's still elements that need answered, but the story is complete within the one book. Even if it's part of a series, an 18, 20 different book series, then it's still a complete story with the happily until the next story, of course. But we complete it. So that last chapter really has to be a home run. That first chapter, I mean, I write my book and hand it over to my editor, except the first chapter, which I will rewrite 5 or 6 times. I'll rewrite it as often as I need to make sure it flows perfectly in my mind. and I'll run it past my my insider team, which is really important as well. The insider team, and say, what about this? What about this? And we murder board it, which is a military term for we go back and forth. Hey, what about this? Your beta readers and your proofreaders are great at identifying issues. They're not so great at getting in your head and figuring out how to resolve these issues.
Right.
So that's why the murder board, they're like, hey, here's how I read this. So I'm looking at it through their eyes, and I can say, hey, how about this? How about this? And I think probably my biggest stroke of genius was I had a co-writer write a book, and an AI, an artificial intelligence inhabiting an android body, was the captain of a ship and went through the whole story. And for some reason, growled, snarled, snipped, and stuff like that. That was the dialogue tags throughout the whole book. I looked at that and I'm like, oh my God, AI, I don't see him doing this. So on the very first page, what I did when he just got inserted into this new android body is I put in, when he was talking to the scientist, he said, you know what? I'm going to snarl, growl, and bark at everybody and see how I like that persona. And I left it. I left all the dialogue tags as they were, and there we are. And the fans were perfectly fine. And then for the next book, we didn't do that because at the end he said, I don't like doing that. I'm going to be more straightforward, more professional with my dialogue as I talk to people. So that's how we resolved that. But how do you fix that? Because looking at it when I was reading the whole book, I'm like, oh my God. It's really taken me out because I'm thinking Android with an artificial intelligence. And, oh, by the way, he's growling and barking and snarling and holy cow, what do I do? Well, it wasn't that hard to fix. I fixed it with one sentence up front, which was really weird that it worked. And then we just went forward in a different way. But urban fantasy, we're coming close to 1 long hour. And I'm sweating like a goat here.
Another thing to keep in mind that I like to do is I end the arc of the one book, but I also have a 4-book arc. So you may have gotten the conclusion to the question that was asked in the first book, but you're reading because you want to know what the characters are going to do to solve. And then even if this turns into a 16-book series, I break them into 4. Because it's just too long to go beyond that. And if I can't think of another quest, as I tend to think of it, I don't do another 4 books. And that tells me that it's done if I just really can't come up with something and it's time to move on.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. You put trilogies, 4 books, biopsies, whatever
right.
things are. And somebody said, how long is too long for an author note? You can't go beyond 10%. As bonus material, even if it's an author note, if it's here's all my books, whatever, you still, the 10% of the full body of the novel. So if you have a 50,000 word novel, you can't go beyond 5,000 words for all of the supplemental material at the end.
Yes. And also, let me say, I used to be a national columnist, and columns were not longer than 750 words. And that's because they learned that the attention strays after that and gets annoying. So I still use that rule. So anywhere between 500 and 750 words is a good length. If you go longer than that, they really are no longer listening.
I shoot for 500 just because it's also, with the volume of books that we are responsible for, Martha, Michael, and if we're doing author notes, I might do 3 or 4 sets of author notes a week. So it's important to be pithy and straightforward. And I keep it to 500 words, 2 pages in my formatting. And somebody asked a question earlier that I didn't get to. What do you think the right length is for an urban fantasy book?
About 60,000 words. Anywhere between 55 to 65 is good. If you really have ingeniously come up with a story idea that's just bang on and you can keep it rolling, I mean, you could do 80,000, but be careful you're not stuffing in battle scenes don't do it. But 55 to 65 is a really good length. And also another thing about characters, and this is and Michael does it, and I think you do it, that you give your character, I give all the main characters things they do that you'll identify. So Maggie in Pea Brain Adventures, she loves coffee and she never waits till it cools off, and she's always slurping it and then holding her mouth open so it cools off. And she does it all the time. And so you come to, it's a readers, and myself included as a reader, I love those familiar little touches that just pop up. It's quick. You don't make a big deal out of it. And, we do with food a lot too. Like James Brownstone loved barbecue, and that place now even sells autographed copies of the Brownstone books because it became such a thing. People make pilgrimages to it. Maggie likes to stand with her hands on her hips like Wonder Woman, like this T-shirt. And
I'm going to barbecue some hot dogs later.
There you go. And I'm drinking CBD coffee right at the moment, and so I'm very chill. For anybody who knows what that is.
Nice. It's legal up here. Alaska, weed is legal.
It's legal here too.
Yeah.
Well, it's the weed without the
THC.
Yes, thank you. It's just got CBD in it, and you don't feel you don't feel different. You just realize that you had a really good day, and you didn't have that little voice in the back of your head saying, well, I don't know. You don't have the voice that's saying what if, and I call what if questions magical questions, which I will not answer. So don't ask me.
I love what if questions because that's all of my books come from what ifs. All of my stories come from what ifs.
But you make them reality. That's different. You're making it. But if you ask me what if the book doesn't sell, my only answer will be, well, then you'll be changing something. I assume.
Those are destructive what ifs.
Yes.
That's looking for the dark side of reality.
That hasn't even happened. No, it'll find you. It's data. You'll fix it. You'll find adjust. Help if you need advice. You'll adjust. And Michael and I have been, back in the old days, we were at midnight trying to get a cover fix. He and I were laughing, the designer not so much. And it was fine. And then the first book of in the series of School of Necessary Magic, Amazon sent out the right cover and the wrong book inside, which was not our fault. And again, we were kind of just smiling at each other saying, okay, I guess we're going to have to fix this. People one-starred us for Amazon's mistake, like we could control it. Yeah. And, we moved on. And then the series took off like a rocket 2 weeks later. You just keep going. Some of it will go better than you expected.
It's the continuous improvement mentality. And that's the business hat. That's not the artist hat. The artist hat, you're destroyed. Oh my God, all this time writing this book, and now they sent out the wrong book. I'm done forever. No, you're not. You're done until you start your marketing campaign and get your book set up, and away you go.
But also,
Rob's your uncle.
Let me add, though, that we put out on Facebook immediately, if you got the wrong book, contact us. We will give it to you. Yeah. So we didn't make them wait for Amazon to figure it out, which they did and replaced it. We were willing, and we didn't make you prove you bought it. We just said, just
good.
Tell us. Well, so fix it fast too.
Yeah. That's a way. I mean, it's managing reader expectations. Hey, if there's an issue, even if it's not theirs, they're going to do right by me. And that works. I've done that as well. I took like 8 of my short stories. And I didn't put them in KU because they're short stories and what the hell, and I wanted the flexibility. So I ran a book funnel giveaway. I didn't even collect their email addresses. Here's 8 of my short stories. Read them and enjoy. And if you like what I write, try one of my series. Yeah. So it's important. Yes, can't wait for Edinburgh. Neither can I. We're leaving fairly soon. Today's the 6th. 10 days from today, I am on a plane heading to Russia. I actually have meetings in Moscow with some folks. Lit RPG. So meeting in Moscow, meeting in Budapest, Hungary. So yes, the globe-trotting author, publisher, writing it all off, at least my half of it, because I'm having meeting. I work every day. So the IRS recognizes that I work every day.
You brought up an interesting thing, by the way. Superhero as a subgenre and lit RPG are close cousins of urban fantasy, and they are not the same. No. So no, but they're very close cousins. But I don't promote out of a favor to them people who are writing in those two because they're also bots. And so to recognize too what subgenre you're in. You're in urban fantasy, but what's your subgenre? And then look for the people who are like you. So if you're targeting me, as on your marketing, but you don't write what I write, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah, no, that goes back to targeting. So very specifically, because people write UF with sci-fi, UF with fantasy, UF with paranormal romance. It's okay, but you have to pick one to initially target to establish your readership base. And I'll caveat that with probably, I'm sure other folks have had great success.
Right.
And 60,000 words, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows was 230,000 words, I believe. But that's completely different.
She is an outlier.
First book, how much? Her first book was what, 60, 70,000?
I don't know anymore. I mean, I read them all myself. I read them to Louis when he was young.
It's a small book, though. It's that start. And once you establish your readership, then all bets are off. You can do whatever you want based on what your readership is willing to, what your readership wants.
But she also said that she knew the entire 7-book series before she even started writing, that it all came to her, that she mapped it out. She's an outlier in that sense. God bless her. Yeah. And especially since she was on welfare with an infant on her own, it's just kind of a cool story, and was turned down by everybody but Scholastic, a tiny publisher. So those are aspirational to follow, as long as you don't get hooked into mine ought to look like that.
Yeah. It's all good. Okay, we are over an hour. We're going to cut it now. Peace, fellow humans. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for your questions. I appreciate that. So we had something to talk about besides our butts, which inevitably it comes down to. And
according to you, everybody's going to need one.
Everybody, a butthole. Everybody needs one at some point in time in their books.
What a classy way to end this.
That's by talking about our butts. There we are. It's just so you know, we're real. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll see you on the flip side. Next week will be the last one. Michael will be back. We'll talk about something profound. I have no idea. Usually we decide about 15 seconds prior to the show, and that's the entirety of our preparation. Besides being engaged with the self-publishing industry every second of our lives, it seems. So we'll end today's broadcast. We'll see you next Saturday. Peace, fellow humans.
Bye.